Hello and welcome to anybody joining us this afternoon. Welcome to our afternoon webinar. Today, we are looking at rewriting your school's anti-bullying policy. And we're also going to touch on how to record incidents of harmful behaviour. Now, if this is your first time joining us, a massive warm welcome. We are the Diana Award, focusing on changing the lives of young people to facilitate positive change. If you have joined us for the first time, then our webinars today, they're going to be very interactive. So you should be able to see we already have a chat function with our fantastic moderator, Josie, who's working behind the scenes for anything on all helpful links, helpful resources, and anything that you might need. We also have the Q&A function, which is going to be live throughout today's webinar. Please do ask any of your burning questions into that. We are going to have 5 minutes at the end of today's webinar, in which I'll be hoping to answer as many of your questions in real time as possible, hoping to be as helpful as we can. We are going to have as well some interactive polls that you're going to be able to vote on live on your screen. And actually, we'll get the first one going now as a little bit of an icebreaker, as we're waiting for more people to just tune in this afternoon. And we are going to get your first icebreaker poll up on your screen. Just a little bit of fun as we're waiting. The first one you should be able to see now, a little bit random, but when you are passing a reflective surface, do you use it to see if anyone's following you? Check yourself out, doesn't everyone? Or use it to contemplate the deeper meaning of life. As you can tell, we are really getting to the most important issues facing society today. We are a little bit random, but just a little bit of an icebreaker. We can test the interactive poll function, and we can see what happens when you pass perhaps a car window, a mirror, whatever it is. Do you check yourself out? Check any stalkers? Or really just contemplating on what is life? What is love? Why are we here? All of these important issues. 90% of you have actually voted already. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give you just 3 seconds if a couple more people fancy voting. And we do have a more popular answer. And I've got to be honest, I just appreciate your honesty. So we'll show the results in 3, 2, 1. Let's have a look. So checking yourself out again. Maybe it's easier to answer this honestly because it's anonymous and we can't see you, but it is the honest answer. You've got to check that your eyebrows are on fleek. You're just looking pretty good. Some contemplating life, and some just a little bit wary in case the same person's been following you for the last couple of streets. Maybe good to check, I understand. We're going to get we have actually one more. We're going to get another icebreaker going, and then we'll get started with today's training. But your second icebreaker of today should be coming up on your screen, and it is now. So, what's the strangest thing you have done whilst attending an online meeting? Might even be right now. Eating breakfast, wearing your pajamas, making lunch, brushing your teeth, or watching Netflix at the same time as allegedly focusing on whatever it is you are meant to be doing. Funny because you might be doing some of these now, and there's obviously no judging. Wearing your pajamas is a popular answer so far. Any of you still in your pajamas at 2 o'clock? Again, no judging. Lockdown rules. It's changed the game. Virtual meetings. We have Sandra, got a raised hand, definitely still in PJs. Fair play to you, Sandra. I promote comfortability and whatever that may be. We've got 100% of you voting. Amazing. Let's share these results then. Let's have a look. As we can see, the most popular is wearing your pajamas. Give me a virtual hand raise if you're currently in your PJs. We do have multiple. Fair enough. Lockdown rules. Wherever you're comfortable with. Making your lunch at the same time. Practical. Eating your breakfast. Impressive. None of you brushing your teeth. That would be odd. That's surely a no camera type situation. Oh, this is interesting. We have 14% of you going with other. Really quite curious to see what strange things you're doing whilst attending this meeting. Might even be doing it right now. But aside from that oddness, we are going to start your training. It is very, very happy for me to have you here. We are doing these webinars as a series in response to obviously lockdown. We'd like to be physically in schools delivering anti-bullying training, but we simply can't yet. In the meantime, we're hoping to offer some webinars on topics that staff members could really find useful, and hopefully this is one of them. And if you haven't seen me before, just a little bit of an introduction. My name is Charlton. I'm an anti-bullying training coordinator, which just means that for the last 2 years of doing this job, I've been traveling all across the UK in all different types of schools, delivering our anti-bullying ambassador program, which essentially is trying to get young people to be the upstanders in their society, offer their emotional support to anybody going through bullying behavior, and kind of be the change they want to see. And I have to admit, I've loved every single second. Random likes and dislikes. Pistachio ice cream, absolutely top notch. Dislikes. Okay, so in the spirit of anti-bullying, it's not that I dislike these people, it's more the habit. But you know those people that will just relax and just chill constantly with their mouth agape, just like all the time. I have to say, I don't understand it. I don't trust it. Do you not notice? Does your mouth not get dry? You need some water? I don't understand. But a random fact, I have been an English teacher. Virtual hand raise if you teach English. Anyone with us today? Okay, absolutely none of you. Going to put my hand down. Oh, we have one. We have Cara. I used to be an English teacher in Italy, Germany, Cambodia. Very different cultures, very different sets of young people, but really kind of helped in my understanding of how to tailor your approach to the needs of different young people. And I tried to bring that into my work in anti-bullying to varying levels of effect. I'd like to think it's very good, but who knows? We're going to get started with your training day. I'm going to go through some aims. These are just the things that we're going to cover today, hoping that by the end of the session, you will have understood and will have accomplished. First one's very simple: to understand the importance of a student-friendly anti-bullying policy. We're going to explore this in quite a lot of detail. You're going to see a lot of gestures. You're going to hear me get really quite passionate and irate, but it's all for a good cause. The next one is understand how to review your school's anti-bullying policy. How do we look at it? Are there anything that we need to change? How do we communicate this? How do we make students at the forefront of what we're doing? All of these different types of issues. And then thirdly, to increase our confidence in reviewing. So knowing how to review and then having the confidence to go back when schools do eventually go back in session. What do we actually need to do in terms of getting students involved, parents involved, and making sure our anti-bullying policy is relevant, is accessible, and is in the betterment of the culture of a school and our communities. Next, we're going to look at understanding the legal requirements when recording bullying incidents. According to the Department for Education and UK statutory law, what types of incidents do we need to record? Is there a certain process? How do we go about keeping these records safe? All of these different types of things. And then finally, to increase our confidence in how to record bullying incidents specifically. Is there a better way to do this? How do we combat a culture in which students feel reluctant to report something because they're often worried about becoming a snitch or a grass or a snake? The mixture between reporting and recording, we're going to explore this in a bit more detail. So these are our aims. I'm not going to waste any time. We're going to go straight into it. The first one, understanding the importance of an anti-bullying policy. So it begs the question, what's the big deal? What I'm going to do is I put a body of text on the screen, but I'll read it out for everybody. This hopefully just explains in a bit more detail. It says that every school in England must have measures in place to prevent all forms of bullying. And it's actually a requirement that every school has a formal anti-bullying policy. However, this is something that we're going to explore, but I think gets completely lost and it goes under the radar. Individual schools are actually allowed to choose the type of policy they have. It just is a requirement by law that they must have a policy in place. This is supported by the Department for Education. So all it says is that UK law states every single school must have an anti-bullying policy. However, it is at the school's discretion as to what that policy is, how long it is, how accessible it is, who it's for, who helps create it, where it's published, is it up in school? Absolutely, schools get to decide. And here's the interesting point. As I've traveled around the UK, a trend that I've noticed is that there's a big push for further devolution, councils to have more authority, schools to be able to have a greater say in what they do. This is an example of a very beneficial type of devolution that impacts anti-bullying very strongly. Schools get to decide, and I don't think they realize it. And we're going to explore what the benefits are of changing a policy and how to make it more accessible and student-friendly. So we're going to move on to that. And I want to ask you all listening along, who is your anti-bullying policy actually for? Have you thought about that question? Before we explore this, I'm going to have the first interactive poll put up on your screen within the training. And it's all about how confident are you that your students and parents have actually read and understood your school's anti-bullying policy in its entirety? What do you think? That students and parents of your school, they have read and they've understood your whole anti-bullying policy? Ever think about this? I ask this quite a lot when I do our regional training in person, and the answer is very similar, very frequently. We have 86% of you voting so far. I'll leave it on for a little bit longer. A couple more people want to try and get their votes in. I'll close it in 3, 2, 1. Let's have a look at these results. So as we can see, 44% of you saying not very confident. The next highest then is 32%. There's no confidence whatsoever. And then 24% of you think reasonably confident. This really kind of highlights exactly the point that I'm trying to make. When it comes to an anti-bullying policy, I've seen quite a lot of these. It's been my job to research schools' policies. When I've been delivering this training in person, I've been asking staff members, do you know your policy? Can you recite any of it to me? Do you know how to access it? Do you think students know how to access it? And in my research, I'd say the average length is probably about 8 pages long. It is full of legal jargon, difficult vocabulary. I really doubt that any student in school is going to spend time reading 8 pages worth of this kind of legal document. It's definitely not for students. I'm not convinced it's for staff, definitely not for parents. So who is it really for? For me, absolutely, there's only one answer. It's for Ofsted. Schools have been told that you must have an anti-bullying policy in place. Ofsted absolutely grades you on this, and so it's a tick box. Let's make it really comprehensive. Let's put a lot of detail in there. Let's put some fancy words, and we'll get a big old tick. But think about the impact that that's having. It's not for students. It's not for parents. It's not even for staff. So what's the point in having one? Because it hasn't been put into the UK statutory law just for the sake of it. And actually the point that schools get to choose their own is incredibly important. So I think we need to start asking these questions. Such questions as, what is good about the current policy? Because we don't always have to start or focus on negatives. There will be aspects of most policies that are really good. So what is good? But crucially, what would you change? Would you simplify it? Would you shorten it? Would you change the language? Would you get student involvement? Because do students actually understand the policy themselves? Can they recite the main points back to you? If there are 8 pages, there aren't any main points. It's so comprehensive. And crucially, do parents understand the policy? Through these webinars, if you have been with us before, you'll hear me talk very frequently about a whole school approach in which students and staff are working together, but crucially, parents are really heavily involved in the school community. You cannot tackle bullying behavior without getting parents on board. So do they understand the policy? Have they even seen it? Is it accessible on your school website? All of these types of questions. And finally, is it easy to find on the website, as I've mentioned? If most of the answers to these questions are no, it's time to start pushing these questions higher. Having meetings with, if you have senior leadership team meetings, if you have meetings with the head teacher or department or faculty meetings, then put this on the agenda. The thing is, it's a beautiful thing that staff members listening along today, that you've chosen to come to this webinar. It clearly means that you want to educate yourselves on what is the big issue about anti-bullying policies. So with this information, it's so easy to go and take this to kind of a higher level and just start asking these simple questions. You could even do a survey in school to all of your students, asking them if any of them know the policy. And if the turnout says that unfortunately not, then let's do something about it. So how can we actually make it student friendly then? I've just gone on this big rampage saying that we need to do this. Well, how? Let's give some tangible and practical tips on how we can do this. Here's one example I really quite like. Now, admittedly, this is a primary school, so it's kind of, it's quite colorful and it's quite short, but it doesn't have to be this really extensive document. In this example, you'll see on your screen, it just it describes what bullying is with a very clear definition that young people are going to be able to understand. You have some icons there to demonstrate the 3 different types, really clear, really quick and visible. And then what I love about this is that it says, what do the teachers and children do to stop bullying? It's not putting emphasis on any one group. And actually, this is promoting collaboration between staff and students. What can we do together to tackle this culture in our school? And it's just really clear bullet pointed there. Now, obviously, for a secondary school focus, which is this afternoon's topic, then you can just make it a little bit different, but it doesn't have to be as comprehensive as you think. And so what we're actually going to do next is a very clear process on how we can do this. So I'm going to explain step by step, and hopefully this can help you with some useful tips and things to think about as we do gear up to go back into school. So the first one, crucially, is to review what you already have. Have a look at your existing policy, because you will have to have one legally, and just really crucially, just evaluate it. As we mentioned, ask those questions before. what's good about this, but what would we like to change? Is it accessible? Do we think that students will understand this? Do we think parents are going to take the time to read this? If not, let's think about a change. Crucially, definitely get students involved in the process. How do you make something student friendly? Get students to tell you how to make it accessible to their demographic. If your school has anti-bullying ambassadors, this is a perfect agenda item for your meeting. Get them to come in, look at the existing document, and you can do this with staff members. You could even invite students to an SLT meeting and get them to do it collaboratively. If your school doesn't have ambassadors, then this can also be done with a school council. It can also be done with buddies, peer mentors, prefects, whatever system your school has in place. There are going to be levels of authority and responsibility for certain students. This is a perfect item for them to work on. And also, I will mention, if you don't have ambassadors, absolutely get in touch and get yourselves booked in with our training. It is completely free, and we are itching to get back in schools as soon as government allows. Next point, map out a new approach. Have a look at what you think a policy could use. Like I've mentioned, get student involvement, get SLT buy-in, and you can even get parents involved, which I'll mention in a second. And just think about the direction that you choose, because as I mentioned before from the Department for Education, you have the freedom to choose. So ask yourselves, what do we think an anti-bullying policy should be like? And we get to decide that. You don't have to go down the same framework as every other school. You guys get to decide. Next is let your students or ambassadors lead. Let them be the ones to take this. I know fine well, because I hear this from staff members all the time. Sometimes as a staff member, and actually I'm going to get you to vote on this, give me a virtual hand raise if you have multiple roles within your teaching description. If you do more than just one thing. I'm going to say it's probably the majority of you. You have to wear so many different hats, and it's just expected that you're able to balance all this whilst teaching a high quality class. I promise you, I understand. So when it comes to things like this, let the students run with it. Let them decide, let them create, and you can perhaps be even on a panel. Have it as a competition. Have students run a competition between themselves who can create the best, most accessible, student-friendly anti-bullying policy, and then have SLT or yourselves vote on which is the best. Get students to lead on this, because if they feel involved, they're going to have this sense of community. They're going to have this sense of that their voices are listened to, they're valued and respected, and that they can contribute to a better school. And that genuinely is a fantastic way to improve student behavior and morale and positivity. But not just students. Let them get creative with it. I actually thought that I was going to say something about parents, so we're going to go on to the next bit. Publicize the policy, let them get creative. As I mentioned, they can do a competition. They can have an online document that goes around, or a video even, that goes around all the school computers. They can have posters up in form rooms. They can have a notice board, whatever it is, run with it. And then finally, publicize that policy. It's something to be really proud of. A lot of people will ask me, and actually there's a question that someone submitted before today's training, is how do you get parents involved in a school's anti-bullying policy, is make sure that they're aware of it first and foremost. If, say this is a process, you've gathered your ambassadors, they've created something really creative, then get it out on your school's website, send it out in a newsletter, have it during an assembly, and just spread the word. Put it out on your school. If your school has a social media channel, the school website, whatever it is, say you are really proud that students have done this ourselves. This is how our school is tackling bullying behavior, and this is what we're doing. Parents are going to see that, and they're going to respect the fact that you are actively looking at how to improve. That's how to get them involved, is simply communicating it and asking parents to form part of the decision-making process as well. So I realize I spoke really quite quickly through that, but hopefully this is quite a simple process. And do you know what it is? Students, there are going to be some motivated students that are going to absolutely run with this. So just put it to them. We can even start the ball rolling during lockdown and have this as we're gearing up to go back into schools whenever that may be. So with that in mind, I would like to show you just a couple of examples. So we mentioned about rewriting a policy and making it accessible. Here's what one school did after having basically the exact same advice that I've just given out. So hopefully you'll be able to have a look.
One of the first things anti-bullying ambassadors did as soon as we got back from training was we rewrote the bullying policy, as it was too long and we thought it wasn't very informative, so we changed it up and it's a bit more snappy and easy to follow, and now it also includes a whole lot more about cyberbullying and how it impacts people.
So not a very long clip, but this was a school that did exactly that. Their teachers trusted them and were like, guys, have a look at our existing policy, see what things need to change, and then come back to us with a different one. And they genuinely created this really kind of succinct but professional document that students would relate to, that they identified they wanted it to really focus on cyberbullying, because the students at this school believed that for them, in their community group, cyberbullying was the most pressing issue. And that's the thing, that's where the beautiful individuality comes in and the devolution of schools. If your school, you think you have a particular problem, maybe it's homophobic language, maybe it's race, culture, gender, maybe it's verbal bullying, physical bullying, cyberbullying, you can tailor that into your school's anti-bullying policy that reflects the culture of your school community. And that's a really beautiful thing to do, because that shows that you paid attention, it shows you care, and it shows that you have the humility to want to change and improve. And students and parents will really respect that. Another example, this is one of my favorite examples of a school. So in Hereward College, again, there's going to be a little bit of text on the screen, but I'll read it out to you. What they did is, they felt that their anti-bullying policy was not really very accessible. Now, this is a college that has a lot of students with special or additional needs. And so what they did was they created a video. This was all done by students. They created a video where one student kind of read out the anti-bullying policy, but did it through sign language. And then they put this video on every TV screen around the school, and they played it, say, every 3 hours. It was just on loop, so that it was just there when parents were coming into school, when they had external guests or visitors, when Ofsted, that was a massive tip, but also for students, just every so often, or even just once a day on the screens, just a reminder that people are taking the time to make this accessible. Here's what we're doing to tackle bullying, and here's how we're all coming together as a community. And I absolutely love that example. But it also begs the question for us as educators, what currently makes our schools' anti-bullying policies inaccessible? And is there anything we can do to make sure it's available for everybody? And also, what are the other creative ways that we can present this policy? To have it round on loop on the TVs through sign language, I think was absolutely brilliant. And the fact that it came from students is so empowering and just really reflects what we try to do with this peer-to-peer framework and trying to encourage students to take on more responsibility. So these are just a couple of examples, but really it is, my message is that it's down to you and it's down to your students. So at this point, I'm actually just going to test and see if any of this information has been useful. So you're going to get another poll up on screen, and I just want to ask, how confident are you that after having this information that you could go back to school and you can create a new student-friendly anti-bullying policy using some of the techniques and tips that we've just gone through? How confident are you that you'd be able to do that when we do eventually go back into schools? And obviously, I'm just looking for honest answers based on the information that we've provided. We have about 75% of you voting, and I have to say, so far, the results are really, really encouraging. We have 78% of you voting. I'm going to give you a few more seconds. Let's say 3, 2, 1. Let's have a look at these results. As you can see, that is really, really pleasing. Either reasonably confident or very confident that now you could go back into school, have these discussions, get that student buy-in, publicize it out to parents, and create a student-friendly anti-bullying policy. And I have to admit, that is just really, really reassuring, because, I mean, it's the whole point of this webinar, but I honestly think it can make a massive difference. If you would like any more support with this, we actually have a specific resource dedicated to this, which is how to create a student-friendly anti-bullying policy. It's already been made. We can either get a link to you in the chat, or we'll send a link out to you after this webinar. That hopefully can help you along with this journey. So thank you very much. Those 3 aims, by the way, absolutely ticked off. Now we're going to look at the second half of this webinar, which is about recording incidents. I thought that was going to change, and there it is. We're going to look at recording incidents in school. So again, kind of similar to the first topic, there's going to be a body of text, and this is specifically from the Department for Education in 2017, exclusively on statutory guidance on recording incidents in school. And it states, staff should develop a consistent approach to monitoring bullying incidents in school and evaluating whether this approach is effective. For some schools, this will mean recording incidents so that they can monitor incident numbers and identify where bullying is recurring between the same pupils. Others don't want to keep written records. And here again is a perfect example of a relative devolution. We want schools to exercise their own judgment as to what will work best for their pupils. Now, some staff will say to me, that's just the government brushing their hands with responsibility and putting all of the pressure onto staff. But I actually disagree. I think that this is exactly what schools need in order to tailor their approach to the individual culture and needs of their students. This is a perfect example of that. What it's saying is that every single school needs to have a consistent approach, so that monitoring of and recording of incidents needs to happen all the time. It never stops. But what it does say is that however schools think will be best to do that is kind of up to them. And so the point of this webinar is we're going to offer some tips and advice on how to maybe make your recording systems better, easier, and a lot more beneficial to addressing harmful types of behavior. So that's what we're going to go through now. When we talk about behavior incidences, and again, going back to the Department of Education, they label 3 types of incidents that by law need to be recorded. This probably won't come as a surprise to any of you, but the first one is prejudice-based incident. Anything where perceived by the victim that it's about one or more protected characteristics. So any kind of prejudicial behavior absolutely needs to be logged, got to be taken extremely seriously. Very similar to that are just elements of a hate crime. Again, any hostility based on race, religion, sexual orientation, disability, or transgender gender reassignment. Again, shouldn't come as a surprise, but obviously that is incredibly serious. And the third one, bullying behavior, absolutely repeated negative behavior intended to make somebody else feel upset, uncomfortable, or unsafe. I don't think there's any of you that are going to be shocked on this, and that your school already definitely will have systems in which to record this. But what we're going to now is go through a step-by-step basis on just how to make it foolproof and how to really improve the culture of this in school. So step-by-step, number 1, very important to make sure that every single member of staff knows when an incident needs to be recorded. And here's the interesting part. When I say member of staff, I mean every single member of staff employed by the school, including bus drivers, cleaning staff, dinner staff, any member that might be able to witness some incident, because all of you know fine well, harmful behaviors do not solely happen in the classroom. It is absolutely going to be happening on the bus home. It is definitely going to be happening in the canteen, and it is definitely going to be happening in the corridors when the cleaning staff are coming in and out. If these members of staff are actually trained, skilled, and know when to report and how to record, then we are absolutely going to be capturing these incidents a lot more. And that also fosters a greater sense of community in which staff are looking out for each other. And it alleviates some of the pressure of you lovely staff who have already said have so many hats to wear. You can't do this all by yourself, and no one should be expecting you to. Every member of staff employed has a duty of care and responsibility, but they need to be trained. What needs to be recorded? What's the process? And how do we go about doing that? So when we talk about when something needs to be recorded, any type of safeguarding issue, all of you I know will have extensive safeguarding training, otherwise you wouldn't be doing the job you have. Anything to do with bullying behavior, but also information about new students transferring over, their records can also be transferred to the school because there might be some underlying information that might leave them as a target to bullying behavior. They might be exhibiting bullying behavior, and this absolutely needs recording as well. And any type of conflict. Now, it might seem a little trivial, but even just a couple of students having an argument, having a falling out, it's worthwhile recording that because that might lead to further issues later on down the line. That might transcend online into cyberbullying. And if we can get as much information as possible, nipping it in the bud and straight away, we're going to be better equipped and better prepared for whatever that might turn into. So first one, all staff understand and are trained on when is an appropriate time to record and how do we do that. So the next step, gather as much detail as possible about whatever it is that's happened. When I'm talking about detail, what I mean by that is all names of people involved, the date, the time, actions, quotes, and outcomes. What happened next? Who was the staff member recording it? What has been done? Have the students been spoken to? Where did it end? All of this information in as much detail as possible, all in one place. Next, once you've got all of that detail, you must keep these records safe and secure, but crucially accessible. What I mean by that is if you still have filing cabinets, just make sure they're locked. If you have transcended to the 21st century and you now keep information online, make sure it's password protected and encrypted And what I mean by accessible is you might have one staff member who is the safeguarding lead, and it's their authority to have access to this online document and sensitive information, but you must have a process of delegation if that staff member falls ill, they're on annual leave, there's an emergency, and you need access to this information because it might be preventative or might be incredibly serious when it comes to things like a hate crime or bullying behavior. There needs to be a process of who has access if this person is not in school, and that needs to be made clear to every single staff member to know who to go to if there is a serious incident. And this is something that everybody needs to be trained on as well. So crucially, the next bit, spotting trends and patterns. What I mean by that is if all staff members are trained on looking out for incidents and how to record, and the recording is done quite extensively, you're going to be able to look at that data and you're going to be able to spot some trends like, are there a lot of bullying incidents that are happening by the school gates? In which case, put a staff member there as a monitor. Does it seem to be happening a lot in the canteen? Maybe look at changing up eating times or putting more staff members at certain times. Or crucially, are there themes? Does it seem to be homophobic language? Does it seem to be based on one certain gender? Does it seem to be when the lads are playing football? Does it seem to be after school? Spotting these themes will only come from gathering as much detail and recording it, because then you can look at that data, spot the trends and the types of bullying. For example, if you have all of these records, you might be able to notice actually the most common type of bullying in our school is verbal bullying, in which case you can then implement campaigns about positive language, how we respect each other, and how we want to speak to each other. Or similarly, if it's cyberbullying, you could do campaigns of how to keep yourself safe online, and how to be a good digital citizen. You can even get a cybersecurity police officer to come and deliver an assembly, but you can't do any of these things if you don't record properly. This is something I'm really going to stress. And again, the hand gestures are coming out in force, but it's only because I believe in it. So I'm just going to summarize what we've just gone through. So number one, all staff members are trained. They know what to look out for, how to record, and what the process is. And then after that, they have collected all necessary details, everything as much as possible. There are clear processes in terms of who to give that information to, where it's stored, is it accessible, and who to give it to if, say, that staff member is off. And then finally, spotting the trends. But once you have spotted any trends in harmful behavior, it is your moral obligation and your safeguarding duty of care responsibility to act on that. And what I mean by is addressing any of those different issues. So similar to the first topic, what I'm going to go through now is how to really build your recording process, how to work within your school community, and the difference between recording and reporting. So one of the biggest problems that I'll hear in school from students and staff is that I don't want to be called a snake. I don't want to be a grass. I don't want something to come back to me just by reporting. So how do we improve this culture in school? How do we encourage young people that reporting is actually supporting? And then once we have reports, how do we record? So we're going to go through some of these processes. Number one, just have a really clear bullying incident form. I'm going to show you an example of this on the next slide, but it's just somewhere, one document where you can log all of the details that I mentioned earlier, complete with names, information, what happened, next steps, in one simple form that every staff member has been trained on how to use. Where does it go next? Where is it kept? Next, this doesn't have to be just in the offline world. One fantastic campaign that I've seen in a lot of secondary schools is an online reporting system. And again, I'll show you an example that students did themselves. It's brilliant. But what you can do is you can just have a report button on every computer in school, which you log on, and students are able to report anonymous bullying behavior that either gets sent to their ambassadors, it can get sent to a safeguarding lead, whoever it is, but just a little bit of a better anonymous way in which students feel comfortable to raise certain issues. And once you have these reports, you then record them, and you can even copy and paste them into an online recording tool. Thirdly, an anonymous box. Very similar to an anonymous online reporting, but you can just have an anonymous box in form rooms, at an entrance or an exit to school, wherever it is, where people might feel more comfortable to just slip in something that's happening. Next, an anti-bullying ambassador safe space. So again, if your school has ambassadors, brilliant, but even if not, this is something that buddies, prefects, school councils, whoever it is, you can establish a safe space. For example, there'll be a group of students, maybe 2 or 3 students, that every Wednesday lunchtime are going to be in this section of the library, so that if you ever need somebody to go and talk to, you have an issue, or you're worried or concerned, you can go and speak to a peer. You don't have to always speak to a staff member, because that can be really intimidating. You don't want to be seen as a snake. So go and speak to a fellow student, go and speak to an ambassador, and then establish a clear recording process where your ambassadors will come and relay that information to you or whoever is the necessary person. Next, parent consultation. I'm gonna keep stressing it. I'm gonna do the backhanded slap. Get parents involved in all of these different issues. Make sure parents are aware of your recording process, because it just gives you legitimacy. It gives you the verification that we are taking bullying behavior very seriously. Here are our processes. We want you to hold us to account. Do you think that we can improve this in any way? Will you feed into this process if you hear about anything? If your child confides in you, if you hear something in the playground, here is the process of how parents can record to us. It just gives you that, or again, just that legitimacy that you are taking a collective stance and you want parents to feed into that process, really fostering that whole school approach, which was almost like I had planned, is the next bit in the slide. Parents are involved, students are involved, staff members are taking the lead with student involvement, and you will really establish something that's really quite beneficial and just takes it to the next level. And like I mentioned before, I'm going to keep saying it, you get to decide. All of this is your decision, not you specifically, but as a school, as a collective, you get to choose what you do. So don't feel like you have to stick to the traditional norms. Don't feel like because you've used the same process for the last 10, 15 years, that needs to stay. We all know as educators, the rapid pace of societal change in terms of our young people, how more active they are, how they are promoting all of these things like inclusion and LGBTQ+ and racial injustice. It's incredible. But surely our systems and our processes need to evolve alongside these young people. And this is just one little way in which you can do it, and you absolutely have full backing to do it in whatever way you think is best for your school. Just have to start this process. So I told you I was going to show you a bullying incident form. Here is an example, very, very simple. Name of the student reporting, the year group, the date, the time, and then what actually happened. Try and get as much information there as possible, who was involved, and then the next steps, action taken by teachers. Have all of this in one document and have everybody trained on how to use it, and as I've mentioned, where it goes, where it's kept. I also told you that I was going to show you an example of students with a report button. Here is the fantastic students in Manchester. They knew that they had a problem where students didn't feel comfortable speaking out. They didn't want to speak to staff directly. They didn't want to be seen walking into a staff room. They wanted something that they could do anonymously to keep themselves safe. So they established a report button on every computer in school that once you put the information in, it gets sent to their ambassadors and also gets sent to the safeguarding lead. Just another way in which, if you do have this culture of students being reluctant to speak out, this might be a mitigating factor. So try it, ask your students if you think it would work, get them to do it themselves, because like I say, the emphasis doesn't have to be on you staff all of the time. So I'm a little bit out of breath. I hope that was helpful. What I'm going to do is go through some further articles for support. Hopefully these will be quite useful. The first one, if you've been with us before, you'll have heard this, but we do have a Facebook group called Educators Against Bullying, in which is just full of thousands of staff members now from around the UK, all sharing best practice tips on what they're doing to tackle bullying behaviour, what they're struggling with, some campaign ideas. It can be a really good supportive place to network and get some really good ideas. Next, again, I'm not going to stop pointing you to our resources portal because we've really rejuvenated this during lockdown. We have some downloadable packs that you'll see here, lesson plans, blog posts, support articles. The 3 pictures there are ones that are the most up-to-date, available to download now. And as I've mentioned, we also have how to create a student-friendly anti-bullying policy and effective recording systems in school. They're available there, so take them, whatever we have, it is there for you to go and take and use, so please, by all means. The Anti-Bullying Alliance also have some brilliant CPD accredited training modules on all things anti-bullying. I've done them myself. They're really, really useful. They help to solidify my understanding of bullying behavior. And if I still had my English class, I would absolutely be sending this out to them now during lockdown and getting them to do it before they come back to school. It could be a little PSHE homework. something that just can make sure that everybody's on the same page as to what bullying behavior is, what we can do about it, that by the time they come back to school, everybody has a really good idea and everybody is on the same page. Finally, if you do not have anti-bullying ambassadors, or you want to train up at the next batch, or you want to upskill, then please do get in touch. We are absolutely registering interest. It is free of charge, and we can train up to about 15 students at a time. And we'd love to get that training out. As soon as government guidance says we can go back into schools, we will be coming. As soon as external trainers are allowed, then we are going to be there. We are taking interest now, so do feel free to get in touch, book us in, and we would love to come in and just train what are going to be brilliant ambassadors in the future. So we have gone to the point of the training where I'd absolutely love to answer your burning questions. I can actually see that there's quite a few in the Q&A box already. So I'm just going to have a look now, and I'll try and answer them all if I have time. So I'm just going to go in order in which I've seen. I got one from Oliver. Sorry, from previous webinar, when will they go on YouTube? From Anti-Bullying Pro, which training modules would you recommend for students to do? So the previous webinars, you should have been sent a link to the YouTube page that are live now, but they're not actually live on YouTube in their own right. But if you have been registered for our webinars, you'll get an exclusive link, and then I think they're going to be on demand in the coming days. Which training modules would I recommend? I would absolutely recommend the Anti-Bullying Alliance CPD accredited modules for students, but also some useful resources in which they might be able to find helpful things like how to tackle cyberbullying, what to do if my friend is being bullied, and how to promote a positive environment in school. They're all up there, so by all means, have a look, take it, and see if they're useful. Adet says, could a school have a child-friendly policy and a staff policy? We have a CP policy that lists all the guidance, and then we have done a child-friendly one that's in their language. That's a brilliant idea, and the thing is, I absolutely understand that schools are still going to need an Ofsted tick box. I know how the system works, but what I'm saying is that shouldn't be your only piece of guidance for young people and for parents. So I think that's a really good idea. Have a student-friendly policy that is up, visible in school, accessible, and you can still have a staff-specific policy that Ofsted are going to trawl through. Having both is fine. Having just the Ofsted one is what I'm trying to negate. So yes, very good point. I've got to say, when Charlton is talking about keeping details of all incidents, we would log all incidents, but not necessarily an incident of bullying behavior, but we would have it in the child's file. Do we need to record these initial incidents as bullying? If it is an incident of bullying behavior, absolutely. Everything needs to be put down because it might help you in a few different ways. It might help you preventatively, it might help you spot trends, and it might help you put a better system of support in for that individual person. But what I'm saying is, if you record every little incident that might be perceived as bullying behavior, might not, you are gathering data as to the behavior of your students. And this data will enable you to better prevent future issues. Like you might notice that there's a lot of people falling out, calling themselves different insults. There are a lot of examples of verbal bullying. You can then put in preventative measures like a campaign on how to speak to each other respectfully, or you can mediate better between students and conflict. It's all information that's going to serve you and your students. It's going to be very helpful, and it could enable you to provide better support. So I would absolutely promote getting down as much information as possible, even if it seems trivial. Is it possible to view some of the previous sessions as I wasn't able to attend? I've registered for the first session, but it requires a password. Absolutely, Jessica, we will be able to do that. All of our webinars are going to be available on demand, so we can either send you a link that we probably already have your information, or they'll be available publicly, but the answer is absolutely yes. Is there any further information about the reporting bullying function from the Manchester School? Absolutely yes. Jessica, what I would say is go onto our YouTube channel, which is Anti-Bullying Pro, and there is almost like a video case study of that school specifically, where the students explain what they did, how they came to that conclusion, and how they distribute it in school. So our YouTube channel, Anti-Bullying Pro, have a look on there because there's a video specifically about that example. So definitely yes. Another one, we are setting up ambassadors. Is there any online training for them available? This is actually something we are working on in response to lockdown, knowing that it still might be a little bit of time before we are physically available to be in schools. So what I would say is just keep an eye out on our website, keep an eye out on our social media channels, because as soon as we are starting to think about delivering online training, then we are absolutely going to do that. And we have some pre-recorded videos that are on their way specifically for students and specifically for anti-bullying ambassadors. Again, keep an eye on our social media channels because that's where we're going to be publishing them. They are on their way. So yes. Odette, thank you very much. It's been brilliant. Odette, you're brilliant just for being here. And that sounds cringy, but I genuinely mean it. And I say this after the end of every webinar. You staff members listening along, you don't have to be here. You could be doing anything else. You are choosing to give up your time because you want more, you want better for your students. And for me, that says an awful lot. So thank you for being with me. What I would like, if you would like to help out in some way, we really want staff feedback. We've never done these webinars before, and the best people to tell us how to improve them are those that are watching and listening along. So if you haven't done so already, please could you fill out a quick survey and let us know the types of topics that you want to learn about, because we only have one more planned. If you have a look on the next slide, we have one more webinar, which is how to make your anti-bullying campaign a success. We don't have any more scheduled because we're waiting to gather the information from staff on what you would like to learn about. So please, it would help if you could fill in that survey. Let us know, and we will be getting some more webinars out there. Got one from Vicky. Who will send the link for previous webinars? I've not received it. Can I email for the link? Who would I email? We have a list of every registrant for this webinar. What we can do is we have your information. We will be sending out links to previous webinars, or we will alert you when they come live on our YouTube channel or live for you to view on some channels. So don't worry, they are on their way, and we'll get them out as quickly as we can. I'm just going to check if there are any more questions before we go. Again, I just want to say a massive thank you for you giving up your time. If I don't see you for any more, then good luck with everything. Hope you get back into schools, and I hope that this has genuinely helped and is starting to make you think about how you can take your policies and recording process to the next level. It's been great to spend my time virtually with you, and I wish you the rest of a lovely day. Thank you very much.